Necessity of understanding God as possessing a form. It is imperative that devotees of God understand that God possesses form. Benefits of understanding Parabrahma to have the form. Most extraordinary spiritual endeavor will always go on the Akshardhama. Even if he commits a sin, all those sins will be forgiven and he will be liberated. One is able to attain spiritual powers and qualities from God. God and Mayas are not able to impose their will and power upon one who has firm conviction that God has a form. Disadvantages of understanding Parabrahma as formless. Does not acquire any spiritual powers from God, is known as committing blasphemy towards God. It creates a great obstacle for himself on getting liberation. Commits a sin graver than even the five worst sin. It's sinful, blasphemous. This is Maharaj's firm conviction that God has a form, and you will spoil your liberation if you don't believe that. BS inclination for the belief that God has a form. Maharaj believes that he does not like someone who just worships and believes in the divine light, but he likes someone who worships and believes that God has a form in that divine light, right? Because that which is formless can accomplish nothing. And Maharaj has heard many of these Vedanta Shastras, and yet his conviction has not been dislodged. And this is not out of stubbornness. This is not out of mental or intellectual stubbornness. He physically sees this divine form, right? And he sees this divine murti in Loya 13 and Loya 14. He says that he physically sees this divine murti. So why would you question if Maharaj himself can know this, right? Even if you can understand that Maharaj has form, if you can understand that Maharaj himself sees that divine sattva form of God, then you can also accept the principle that God has form. So why should one believe that God has form? It would not be possible for God to be the all doer, right? If he did not have form, how can he create something that has form? Akash is formless, but pots and other forms that have been created from Prithvi cannot be created from the Akash, right? So Brahma, all the rest of creation has form, so the creator must also have a form. Entire cosmos has a form, so God also has a form. That which is formless cannot do anything. The teachings from the Shastras will be contradicted. When the Shastras say that Bhagavan and Parabrahma has a divine radiant form with hands and feet, then that means that God has a form, right? They Shastras also say that God saw, or if that God saw, that does that mean that he only has eyes? No, he has eyes, ears, other organs as well. So that God looked towards Maya is also another phrase. Now, if God looks, does that mean he only has eyes? No, he has everything else, so just like a regular human, right? But he is actually eternally divine. And when the Vedas refute the hands and feet of God, they're actually refuting the Maya hands and feet, right? But God's form is actually all divine, not Maya. Without a murti, there can't be no divine light, right? Maharaj says that there is immense, massive divine light. But if there is no form, then there can be no light either. That means that the light must be from that form, right? So the intensity of millions of suns, that divine light was like a brahmast, right? That light is the form of Purushottam Brahm. And what is that light? That light is Brahm. It is characterized by Satchit Anand, right? That is the light of Purushottam Bhagwan. And the same with that Varun or Agni or Surya, they have a form in their abode, but the fire itself or the water itself or the Surya or the sunlight itself is described as formless, right? In the same way that Brahm is characterized by Satchidanand, that light may not have a form, but Bhagavan within that light does have a form, right? And the all-pervasive light, the Brahma, that is the divine light of Purushottam Bhagavan. And the Brahma we are referring to as the divine light, not in the sense of Akshar Brahma. Ability to reside in one location. Vyataric nature would not be possible. We know that Parabrahma is both Anvay, right, eminent, and Vyataric, transcendent. Right? So he's able to be in multiple of these different places, right? But also he is able to be in one place, right? One place in Akshardham, but he's also able to simultaneously be present in multiple different places. Now, if God does not have a form, then the ability to reside in one location would not be possible. But Abram has a form and is Vyatarik and Akshardham, right? So if you have a thorn is used to remove a thorn. Therefore, both of those thorns are discarded. So people may think that, okay, God only assumes a human body, a physical body, to relieve the earth of its sins. Then when he is done, then he discards that physical body. Thinking this, people believe that God does not have a form, but God eternally has a form. And when he comes onto this earth, he is also present in the Akshardham. And when he finishes his task, then he leaves the physical body, but he still also remains in Akshardham. So God forever possesses a divine form in Akshardham. What is the form of Parabrahma when he is Beatific? We know that pillars have a form. We know that horses can have a form. They have a definite shape. So what is the appearance of this God? Right? People may think that God has assumed many of these different forms, such as Matsya, Kach, right? Fish, tortoise, boar, all these different animals. So seeing this, people may think that God does not have a form, but God eternally always has a form, and He never forsakes this form in Akshardham while He assumes all and enters the Chaitanya within all these different avatars and forms. Right, so while reciting an Akshardham with his Vyadatic form, he assumes whatever form that is required elsewhere. And this form is extremely luminous. It is dark, but due to the intensity of light, it appears fair. It has two arms, two legs, not 4, 8, or 1,000. Its appearance is very captivating, young like a teenager. There's no deformation, right? And all the muktas, all the attendants are satya, divine, and extremely luminous. And those muktas are like two armed like a human being, characterized by Sachin and Anand, right? Eternal existence, consciousness, and bliss. That form of God is equivalent that light, equivalent to millions and millions of sunnys. That God is so handsome that even millions of kandis are put to shame. Right before his bliss, pleasure of seeing countless beautiful women pale into existence. Right, all the pleasures and sense objects of this realm and higher realms pale into insignificance. That is the form of God. Always has two legs, but he may appear to have four legs, may appear to be like human, but he is always divine. Antaryami form is like the Sakara manifest form. Why? Because it governs the granting of fruits of karmas. So because it functions as if it has a form, it should also be considered to have a form. Maharaj pervades all the jivs and ishwars through his antaryami form. And the antaryami form should also be considered to have a form, right? One believe oneself to be Chaitanya, right? Beyond the three bodies, influence of the three bodies and states, waking, dream, and deep, and above the three bodies, through Sukshma and Karan. And so one should also see that form of God within one's Atma, right? One should also see God through all everywhere he goes, through all the mobile and immobile creation. Wherever he sees immobile mobile creations, he sees the form of God. Every single he does not see an atom without Buddha. Right? So that God pervades all the Jiva Ishvars, Maya, right? That Antaryami form should also be known to have a form, right? He's described as pervasive in the Shastras, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have a form. He is described as pervasive, meaning that in one location, residing in one location, he's able to give darshan and assume whatever form in multiple places, but he's not pervasive in the sense of being formless like Akash. Parabrahm, supreme and the Avatar, but that's one of the most significant concepts in Hindu Dharma, right? It has been prevalent in all these different shastras. Purpose of the manifestation of the avatars have been to lighten the burden of sin, protect devotees, destroy demons, destroy unrighteousness, establish righteousness, right? Bhagavan, what he does is he assumes all the different forms of the avatars, right? But he doesn't abandon his own form while doing so, right? He assumes the form of the avatars once that task is created, and he abandons that body, right? So he purpose for manifestation is to accomplish various tasks. Cause of all the avatars, root cause of all the avatars is Purushottam, right? Purushottam, he transcends Akshar, cause of all avatars emanate from Purushottam, merge back into Purushottam. Significance of Avtarvat, right? We may question that does Parvan who transcend Akshar himself assume all the different avatars like Matsya Kach, right? So how are the Chaitanyas of the avatars different from the Chaitanya of Parabram? How are they, if they are distinct, how are they distinct? So the Maharaj says that it is only when Maharaj Purushottam Nara enters and pervades Virat Purush, does Virat Purush have the ability to have an avatar manifest through him, right? So because even without the presence of Sri Hari in Virat Purush, that Virat Purush cannot even have the ability to stand, right? So it is only when Virat Purush, Parabrahm pervades Virat Purush can an avatar manifest, right? So what happens is that Parabrahm pervades the distinct Chaitanyas of all these different avatars, but he doesn't manifest himself as the avatars, right? So Purushottam, whoever he enters for the task of completing the task, that's due to his own powers, right? And that form is eclipsed, right? And those powers that the avatar has are known to be the powers of Purushottam Narayan, right? When fire enters iron, it suppresses the quality of coldness, right? And it exhibits its own quality of fire, right? So then when the sun rises, the light from the other stars and moon merges into its own light. Whoever God enters, Bhagavan enters into this stuff, that he overpowers is their light and exhibits its own divine light, right? After he completes it, then he separates from it, right? But he never assumes the form, right? He enters Akshar, then he enters Mul Prakati Purush, then he enters Pradhan Purush, then he enters Virat Purush, and from Virat Purush, then he enters Brahm, Shiv, Vishnu, and the Chaitanyas of all the different avatars. But he does not assume the form itself, right? He is separate from that form. He enters within the Chaitanya when he suppresses the qualities and characteristics of Virat Nara and all the different avatars and independently carries out the task. Difference between avatars and avataris, right? He does not take the form of the avatars, but he pervades them. He gives them the necessary powers that they need in order to do the task, right? This difference between avatars and avataris should be known to be like king, nobleman, archer, arrow, stars, and moon, archer, arrow, emperor, regional ruler, sun, and stars, right? This is endless and vast difference, and whoever does not understand this difference, blasphemy against God. One should always understand Purna not to be the authority cause of all the authors. Conviction in God's supreme form to attain Akshardham. We know that Bhayatmanan is one example. We also know that this person went to Samadhi, saw all the different sadhus and devotees in the abodes of these different realms. You know that Akshardham is one attains Akshardham when one has conviction in God's supreme form. Right? Even if he leaves the satsang fellowship, then his love for God's form would not diminish. He will still admit go to the abode of God. But even if he follows many commands and he is in the satsang fellowship, but if his conviction in God's supreme form is not firm, then he will go to all of these different realms, but he will not go to the abode of Purushottam Narayan. Right? So one should always believe that God and Purushottam Narayan is the Avtari and cause of all the Avtars. Right. And if he doesn't believe that, that is considered to be blasphemy, right? The most important thing means the moksha is understanding upasana. And among all, upasana is the most powerful. So one essence of upasana is that one becomes one as one understands God. So Sri Krishna, Guru, Ramchandra, Vaikunt, Vasudev, Shvedev, right? Narnara and Badrikasha. Right? So one should understand that Maharaj is the supreme, right? Even if you leave satsang, he will still be able to go to Akshardham, right? And obstacles will not be overcome if one doesn't have resolute faith in God's manifest form. Right? And Maharaj always says that he wants to take everyone who has conviction in his form to into Akshardham. Right? That is Maharaj is himself, his own wish. Bhagwan's own insistence for conviction in God's supreme form. Maharaj manifests on the earth to rid countless of these different chiefs of their ignorance, grant them ultimate liberation. He says that I'm not saying this out of pretense or self-conceit or to spread my own greatness, but he says that this belief and this concept will help and tremendously benefit everyone. And so this discourse he has seen through his own experience, it is aligned with the Shastras, and he thinks that it is not appropriate to discuss this in public, but he should tell you nonetheless. And he tells them to keep the principle constant in their minds and to keep it every single day. Remember this every single day. It's so vital. Remember every day of your life. And so his desire was that principles, his disciples regularly engage in modern Nidhyas of his supremacy. Right. So a Nityananda Swami example happened. We also know that Adbhutananda Swami example happened where Maharaj says that infinite Narnara and Lakshmi Narayan, they worship this Shriji Maharaj, right? And he also consecrated his own murti of Hari Krishna Maharaj in Valtar in the southern shrine, even though he wanted to put it in the central shrine to preserve the affection that people and the devotees had for him and to maintain social conduct. All the others, they insisted to put it in the southern shrine. And so he told Anand Swami that. He also told Gopalan Swami that if he does not spread his true glory, that he will keep his body on this earth for 1,000 years. Right? He wanted all everyone to understand that he was distinct from all and above all, and he could not be equated with that of Narayana and Lakshminarayan. That's why he wanted him to be in the central shrine. But he put it in the southern shrine to preserve the affection that all had for him. And he said that everyone should worship this murti to attain ultimate liberation. Right? Those who keep refuge in none other mean matchless and loyal devotees. Right? He said this to Gopalan Swami. He also said this to Adbhutananda Swami that when he goes around, what does he describe him as? And he says that like a sort of like the Kapil Dev. And so the Maharaj then rebukes him and criticizes him and says that from now on you should preach to all that this Purushottam Narayan is the Avtari, a manifest. And he says that if he were to preach this knowledge to the king, he will imprison or tie him to the leg of an elephant. But still, he says that Maharaj is the all-doer. Because ultimate liberation is also only possible if his supreme form is understand. That's why Gurunath Swami manifest form was aware. And that's why he was not deterred by the contents of the Shastras or by society. And that is why he continuously talked about the supremacy of Bhagwan Swami. That is why everyone wanted to Junagadh to associate with him. And Bhagwan Swami as expressed, supreme as expressed in the Shastras of the Sampradaya. Then we have Bhagwan Swami Supreme in terms of his powers, purpose, divine powers, and works. So reason serves manifestation. First reason was so in general it was to grant liberation, destroy the ignorance in the form of Maya, to destroy the innate swabhavs and base instincts that these chiefs had. And he told Gopalan Swami that his 6 reasons were and why did he have to come on this earth? Because he first told the Lord of Vaikuntha to incarnate, propagate Ekamik Dharma. He was not able to do this even though he lived for 11,000 years. Then the Lord of Golok stayed on this earth for 125 years, more than the Kali span of 100 years, and he was still not able to do this. And so he said, Maharaj, all these lords came onto this earth, and whoever offered worship to them were then taken to their respective abodes, but not to Akshardham. So that means if the Lord of Akshardham, which is you himself, manifest and then spread and do your cause, and then aspirants can actually reach Akshardham. And so that is why Maharaj says that the 6 reasons are: 1, to propagate knowledge of supreme form, grant previous Avtars and the followers of the human birth, liberate Bhakti-mata and Dharma, revive and spread the long forgotten Ekatmik Dharma, and then 5, give fruits of austerities and devotion in the form of my darshan to those aspects. 6, to initiate sadhus whom body Ekatmik Dharma will, sugar will wonders for from create justice and my divine incidents expounded on the extraordinary divine powers, incident samadhis, right? The scale and type of samadhi was that Maharaj did was like no one else, right? Many people may have given little instances of samadhi, but the scale and manner, and not, this is not only to human beings but to animals, and just through a mere wish, he was able to grant people samadhi, whether a child, elderly, male, female, sinner, pious, Hindu, Muslim, right? Everyone at Maharaj was able to give samadhi to, but just by looking at his darshan or his voice or his name or the sound, people were going to samadhi for 10 days, 1 day, 16 days, 6 months even, right? And these incidents are captured in the shastras as well. And they in samadhi they were see their respective isha, they're merging into Maharaj's murti, and they're after merging back into him, showing that he is the supreme of the right. There is no ever up that has ever granted samadhi into the scale and to the magnitude the Maharaj has been able to do. People, all communities obeyed Shiji Maharaj's command, right? He unified all of these different caste and systems, and he inspired them to abide by moral conducts, right? He won over and transformed all the sinful and evil-minded people who oppress society. It said that one should not even touch even fallen belongings. Powerful Paramahansis followed, obeyed his command. In one single night, 500 Paramahansis gave up their beliefs and caste and accepted initiation from Maharaj, and they observed the 108 arduous trials that Shri Maharaj had prescribed. This include begging for food. They made food so tasteless that not even a dog would be able to eat it. Right? They made water tasteless. They were able to tolerate cold and heat without seeking shelter from anything. They tolerated immense physical and mental hardships. And these Brahmins were not ordinary. It's not like they had nothing better to do, right? They were prosperous. They were energetic, highly intelligent, both worldly and spiritual affairs. They excelled in saintliness, scriptural study, wisdom, right? Muktan Swami, spiritual aspirant, Brahman Swami, a poet, Nidan Swami, master of the Shastra, Govardhan Swami, master of Ashtanga, Sandha Swami, master of Samadhi, Swarbrahman Swami, constant darshan of his Atma, Swami, power to revive a dead mare, Satchidananda Swami, ability to induce rainfall, Nishpurana, embodiment of renunciation, Bhayatmana, was beyond the shackles of his body, Advaitana, Magnira, right, who had pleased the mother goddess and the master of the occult, right? Gurunath Swami, right, had the power to support countless millions of universe. Each of these Paramahanses had a unique power, and they could be worshipped as the god of this world if they wanted to, but despite that, they still surrendered themselves fully to Shri Maharaj because of his love and powers. And so on receiving the command of Shri Maharaj by letter, 18 Paramahans, 18 householders, not Paramahans, householders immediately renounced their worldly lives. And this was in total around 3,000 of these sadhus, right? Just as monks are attracted by, like these sadhus were attracted by Shri Maharaj's divine love and powers, darshan of his divine powers through sadhus and devotees, right? So Sarupanand, emptied pits of hell, Vapkanan, dead mare, Govardhan prevented eclipse, Vashrams Sutar of Bhadra assumed a divine four-armed form, went to the abode of Bhumapurush, where countless ants assumed a divine form. Just by his wish, Sheikh Ji, Muslim disciple, was invested with the ability to grant Sabandhi, right? In Jamnagar, Surabhan Swami went to Jamnagar with 250 saints, sadhus, and they all rested, and some of the merchants said, are any of you like Krishna? And then so he said, observe carefully, and then he saw all the 250 sadhus in the form of Sri Krishna. That was the darshan of his divine powers that you were able to see through his sadhus, right? Once Sri Maharaj commanded three sadhu, Nar Narayan, Anand, Krish Anand, and Purnanand to go to Burampur. And they said that one end of the stick would grant red end would grant samadhi, and yellow end would wake them up. And so then they did, and then what they did is they put everyone to samadhi, in which they had darshan of both Yampuri and Akshardham. And then on awakening, they knew that these sadhus were gods. And so they corrected them. They were not gods, they were simply servants of God. But that Purushottam Narayan was their guru. Extraordinary divine works, inspiring his own worship. No other avatar was able to establish this type of worship of their own selves. Right? In the 14th day of the past, after the passing of Ravana, Swami Maharaj says, and worship manifests God through the name of Swami Narayan, right? And in that, Ram, Krishna, Govind, Hare, and Narayan, other forms of God were also sung, but they were replaced with Swami and Narayan. And through merely a single command and without harboring any doubt, all of these devotees began to enchant the Swaminarayan mantra, right? Right, so that is inspiring of his own worship. Shastras about him being written. Shikshapadri, Vashrama, Satsangi Jivan, his divine incidents, right? His divine incidents and teachings. He commanded Muktan Swami to write all the Shastras that relate to his teachings and incidents for as long as he lived. He commanded Muktanand, Premanand, Brahmanand, Nishpuranand, Devanand, other Brahman poets to compose thousands of these beautiful Kirtans, various languages and rhythms on Maharaj's Murti and his teaching and his divinity. Building of mandirs, he built 6 grand pinnacled mandirs. He even installed his own Murti under the name of Hari Krishna Maharaj in Vartal to establish his own supreme Upasana. So that only worship of this Murti was worthy of supreme worship and meditation, granting his devotees the spiritual status of Brahma. Maharaj came onto this earth to destroy the base instincts and swabhavs and make these jivs Brahmrup through his association and teachings. He uprooted the material desires of the devotees, right? And because of this, countless of these renunciants attained Jivamukti, a state of being liberated while being alive. And so that is what he did. He enabled countless of these sadhus to attain this spiritual state. Right, that was his accomplishment. And so to examine the understanding of these sadhus, right, Maharaj asked that all of these different avatars had killed demons, but he had not. So why is he still God? And then the sadhu says that no matter what you say, you're actually still indeed God. It is true that many of these avatars have destroyed demons, but you have destroyed the demonic nature that is within us, right? You have destroyed the flaws within us, the base instincts from people, rather than killing them. And so that is why you're the authority of the authority. You have given us divine bliss. And so Maharaj was very pleased with this understanding of his devotees. That is under when he asks this question to the Paramahansa, that is under granting his devotees the spiritual status of Brahm, because he is able to get rid of the flaws and swabhavs of the devotees and sadhus, promising his devotees ultimate liberation. He says that whoever follows his commands and worship him, he will take him to his supreme abode, Akshardham. And it is for the liberation of the jivs that he has manifested along with the sadhus. So if he abide by his command, he will grant his supreme abode to those who follow his command. He will personally come to collect his devotees at the time of their death. This promise will not be changed. Right, we see this even today, manifestation through the Guna Satpurush, right? Previous avatars liberated their devotees according to their own capability, but before returning to their respective abodes, they didn't facilitate for future devotees. How will future devotees attain their phone and be liberated? Maharaj was able to, through the succession of the Guna Satpurush, was able to remain eternally on earth and created that lineage. Right, despite having returned to Akshardham, the means of liberation still remains through the sadhus, right? Through the manifest form of the Guna Satpurush, right? And that is through the succession of Gunathis Purushes that we see here today. Essence of Maharaj's discourses about his own supreme form. There were various discourses regarding his own form. Sometimes he said Asadat, Sadhu, Ekantik Bhakt, Acharya, Guru, Advisor, Ishradev. Sometimes he says a devotee of Sri Narayana. Sometimes he's saying Purushottam, Supreme Avatar. Sometimes he's saying worship of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Sometimes he's saying he's Sri Krishna himself. Why all these different names? And why all these different installation of different murtis, Ahmedabad and Bhuj? He installed Sri Narayan Dev, then he installed Sri Lakshmanaran, Mohan Dev, right? Radha Raman Dev, right? Sri Gopinath Dev, Sri Surya Narayan Dev. In all these different mandirs, instead of installing his own murti in the central sun, why did he install all the different murtis of the different deities? We know that on the 14th day, he initiated the worship of Swaminarayan and in the place of Radha. So why establish Swaminarayan, but also install these different deities? So why did he do this? Why did he speak in such a varied manner? But he had an intention for doing this. First reason, right? Developing conviction to manifest God is most difficult. Right? It is very difficult, right? It says that it was the great misfortune of the others from not understanding the true form of Krishna Bhagwan as Bhagwan. Right? He says the developed conviction of God is more difficult than anything else. Its topic is extremely complex. So he thinks that if I were to talk about this, what if someone were to misunderstand this? Right? What if their inclination and understanding that has already been developed were to be destroyed or uprooted? Right? So he makes this. And despite having so many years having elapsed, he was still unsure about delivering this discourse. Right? It's understanding him as to be the supreme avatar of all the avatars is difficult as chewing chickpeas made of iron. Right? Those who had worshipped him completely surrendered, yet they sometimes still maintain to struggle and understand his supremacy. Right? Many found this to be unacceptable to society, even Paramahansa, Muktan Paramanand, they found it difficult to understand. And only after many years did they fully, truly understand Maharaj's true form. Right? Swami said that 100 goats may bleed together, but right, one lion roars, that would pierce through everyone, right? It like saying that all the avatars' powers that have been granted by Maharaj, the divine powers which all avatars possess, granted by Maharaj, that is like the forehead of an elephant being torn by the roar of a lion. Right? It was only when one has strong spiritual impressions and such from previous births, worthy character and the associated guna Satpuru, can one understand Maharaj's supremacy, but they cannot be digested through any other way. Range of audiences. It is due to the levels of understanding and to tailor the levers to tailor to the audiences that Maharaj was speaking, that he spoke in such a variety of different ways, right? An ant only needs to be fed an equal amount to a grain of sand. An elephant needs food weighing many kilos, right? Only when aspirants are given knowledge to which they are capable of, do they are able to enjoy their full bliss. Right? So that is why Maharaj has given all these different variety of different talks about his own form, right? And called himself his own form. Right? So if someone were to prefer the worship of the non-manifest form or given the knowledge of God's manifest prior to becoming suitable for it, then due to misunderstandings and doubt, then their understanding of both the Paroksha and Pratyeksh form of God become disturbed. And so that's why Maharaj has spoken to the individual levels of spirituality and appropriateness. Right? And so Maharaj he went to all these different villages. And it was only natural that there were going to be a mixed audience of aspirants believing in different deities. So Maharaj would speak in a manner that enabled all of them to be inspired. And so what he would do is he would present himself as an ideal sadhu, talked about his own spiritual endeavors, explain the attributes of an ideal or the comic book as a sadhu. He spoke himself as the ideal of all three. And then when he talked about the glory of other avatars, he would then try to have and persuade the spiritual aspirants present that of God it was present in Maharaj right before it manifested or visible to the seated in this assembly, so that people could see that their Ishtadev was manifest in the form of Shiji Maharaj. Then, once they have developed this conviction, then he would steadily correct their belief. He never refuted any of that, but he would say that now this Shiji Maharaj is actually the avatar of the avatari, the manifest form, the supreme avatar, right? The supreme avatari. He's the avatar, cause of all the avatars. I mean, that is how he slowly corrected this belief. But if he had spoken openly, well, then it is possible that the true understanding would never have dawned upon him, right? If that had been explained as it really is, then it maybe would not have been accepted, and opposition might have occurred. Right? Maharaj also wanted to remove many Vaishnavas. Says we do not want to keep a single Vaishnava. Right? We shall write what we find in accordance with the other shastras. Right? After that, Nityananda Swami said that. Then he said that okay, he only allowed for the current number of Vaishnavas to be retained. That's why, due to the different levels of understanding, Maharaj to talk about his supreme form at every place and at every opportunity. Why? It's because of compassion, beneficial motive for the liberation of jeeves. Right? He spoke based upon the circumstances. Also reveals his love for the Paramahansa and sadhus. Spoke in a manner that all would understand and accept. Stop it.